sometimes I appear in a particular podcast. No, not this one, but one that has a much broader, bigger, but wider audience, right? And this show, Emil's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I talk about people of color things. I talk about things that pertain to Filipino Americans, things that pertain to, in particular, Asian Americans, right? And so I'm talking about Filipino American history, and I'm talking about the connection to the Dred Scott decision. I know this is one of those things that like stops people cold. Like, what the hell, Emil? Draymond Green is caught on video punching Jordan Poole, and you want to talk about the Dred Scott decision? What the heck's wrong with you, Emil? Yes, I want to talk about the Dred Scott decision. I'll talk about Draymond in a second. I will. I know this is not technically a sports show, but we're going to talk about it. And I want to talk about it, but first I got to get this Dred Scott decision talk out of my system, because there I was, I'm telling them that the Filipino American connection to Dred Scott, the decision that really set off the abolitionists, began the drumbeats for the Civil War. It's the decision that said a black man could not sue for his freedom in Missouri. Even though there were free states like Illinois, he went from Illinois to Missouri, Dred Scott, sued for his freedom. The Supreme Court decided by a 7-2 vote that he can't be free. So this is another coincidence that this is October, which is the start of the Supreme Court with the first African-American woman on the Supreme Court. I just wanted to bring up Dred Scott. And I said, this decision, which came down in 1857, is known as maybe the worst Supreme Court decision ever. Okay. Now you know that. Now you said, all right, Emil, where's the Filipino part? Well, the Filipino part is that the judge, Roger Taney, I say Taney, some people say Tawny. Tawny makes me think of Tawny Katane. I think of some kind of 80s, Josie and the Pussycats kind of thing. Tawny Katane. So I say Taney, out of respect for the racist Roger Taney, Supreme Court Justice. He wrote the opinion on Dred Scott. And the Filipino part was a decision that Taney wrote in 1840 that was used as justification for the worst decision ever by a Supreme Court. That 1840 decision was U.S. versus Dow, D-O-W. That's how it was spelled. Dow is one Lorenzo Dow. Lorenzo Dow, a Filipino in America. And he was a mariner on a ship, American flagship, out in the Atlantic. But the jurisdiction was given to Maryland. They convicted him of murder. Dow was smart enough to have attorneys. They went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And Taney made this opinion in 1840. Dow, by the way, was charged October 31st, 1839. Took some time, got to the Supreme Court in 1840. Here was the decision. The decision was, well, Lorenzo Dow was not a white Christian. White Christian, that was it. That was your ticket. That was your ticket to the promised land in America. If you were a white Christian, you got into all sorts of society. You were able to participate in America. You were not enslaved, as you may have been enslaved if you were a non-white person in other countries. That was the standard. Lorenzo Dow could have been enslaved in Asia. He was a Filipino. He was a person of color. And the only question that Taney said was, is Dow a white Christian? The answer is no. Guilty. Just like that. Notice, this is the ruling that was used to say an African American or a free African in America could not sue for his freedom. You'd think, oh, well, the Dred Scott decision, it was like based on some case against an African American or an African or something. No, a Filipino. It was based on a case involving a Filipino, and that's why it's history. So I said that. The kind of reaction I got was like, Emil, and thank you for solving that. But this is the thing. If you have a mostly white audience, they might say, oh, what's the big deal, Emil? That was in 1840. And then the Dred Scott, whatever it is, that was 1850. Who cares about that? That's the same kind of attitude we're fighting now from the people who want to take away history, who want to denudre history and say, oh, you don't need to know that. We need to know that. But that kind of reaction just hit me in the face. It was like, you don't see it, but I see it. I feel it. It's important, not Filipino history. It's Filipino-American history, but most importantly, because it was written by Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Roger Taney, this is American history. This is the building blocks of white supremacy. It goes back to 1840 with that Dow decision to 1857 in Dred Scott and continues on today. Probably more, less obtuse, but there is a thread that goes back, and the roots are Filipino. That, to me, is what we're talking about. We're talking about this October, Filipino-American History Month, and wouldn't you know, it's history. It's history. This is also a point of this play that I'm in. I talk about it a lot this past week. Theaterforthenewcity.net out of New York. They're doing a virtual reading of this play, The Conductor by Ishmael Reed. I've talked about it. I think you'll find it interesting. It's a staged reading. So it's just actors speaking, some acting, perhaps, the words of the noted novelist playwright Ishmael Reed. And I think you'll find it interesting. It deals with the recall of the progressives in San Francisco and the reaction that's come out after the school board members of San Francisco were recalled, after the DA was recalled. There was a kind of a conservative push. And then Ishmael throws in a little twist. What if an international incident causes some of those pro-recall people to suddenly find the shoe on the other foot and they are forced to flee? That's improbable. I mean, no, well, it's the stuff of good playwriting. It's The Conductor, stage reading, October 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. Go to theaterforthenewcity.net. Theaterforthenewcity.net. Tickets are $18, but you can see it anywhere. You don't have to be in New York. You could be anywhere, literally anywhere, because it's a virtual reading. The Conductor. Ishmael Reed's The Conductor. I have a very, very small. I got one speech where I play a conservative commentator. So I play against type. Think of me as Tucker Carlson in brownface. Right? Turnabout is fair play. Tucker Carlson with massive bronzing. Maybe a precancerous suntan. Really dark. Of course, if he had enough melanin, he could fight that off. But that's my bit. The Conductor, October 13th through 16th. Virtual reading. Check it out. Theaterforthenewcity.net. You can be anywhere to engage, and I hope you do. It's a lot of fun. The Conductor, theaterforthenewcity.net. And what do you know? I talked my way into the natural portion of the show. Coming up today here on Emil Amok's Takeout, my takes on all things considerable. I'm not first of all a sports talk show, but I talk about things that people are talking about. And is there anyone not talking about Draymond Green and the Golden State Warriors, especially if you're Asian American? As far as Asian Americans go, big on basketball, not just with Linsanity. Asian Americans, especially on the West Coast, the most Asian American place on earth, right? They love the Lakers. They love the Warriors. They get in a little, some arguments about, well, clearly the Lakers are inferior. But everyone loves the Warriors. But if you haven't seen it, the Warriors have a problem. It was downplayed on Wednesday when it was reported that there was an altercation between Draymond Green, the team's star bully, and Jordan Poole, the young point guard, shooting guard, who both of them are up for extensions, tens of millions of dollars on the line. And I'll play the video that shows what Draymond Green did. And that's why, since Wednesday, people were talking about it. The Golden State Warriors kept it under wraps. But today, this morning, Friday morning, the video's out. I'll play the video in a second. We'll also talk about Filipino American History Month, more of that. More about, look, I know Joe Biden mentioned the word Armageddon from a fundraiser last night. And suddenly that's what we're talking about, Armageddon. But Armageddon, I think we're further from Armageddon in terms of the world and more in terms of Armageddon for the Golden State Warriors and the NBA. Because I think, you'll see, we'll talk about this, the Draymond Green situation. I think it's a bigger deal than you might think at first, because this is sports, for goodness sakes. We're also going to talk about Joe Biden and his dope pardon. I think it's an important thing. I think it's real. It doesn't get by a lot of the state's problems, the state laws that have to be gotten around. Talk about that. Talk about DACA, why if you're a dreamer, it's a concern, but not a terribly big concern yet. We'll also talk about KGO radio. I worked there. One of my first jobs in radio was they're switching. They're going away from news for something. They're doing something different. I don't know what they're doing, but I got some kind of cryptic message that KGO was doing something different. So we'll talk about that. A big 810, big flamethrower station on the West Coast. If your head is in the right way positioned with a transistor radio, you can be on the East Coast and pick up KGO 810 in San Francisco. That's how powerful the station it is. So, and it was like one of my first jobs in news radio, KGO. So a little mention about that. Now I want to bring up my dear friend. He is Professor Emeritus, Asian American Studies, San Francisco State University, College of Ethnic Studies, Filipino American Studies. I'm talking about, of course, Professor Daniel Phil Gonzalez. Professor Dan.
Good afternoon, sir. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Good to see you. Good to hear you.
Got a lot of steam pressure up there regarding Devon, and the Green versus Poole situation.
Yeah. Well, I'm telling you, I was not going to lead with that, but I think it's important when you think about sports and you think about what sports means in our country. And this, after Wednesday, when it was first leaked out and people started talking about it a little bit, there was no video. They called it an altercation, and it like a love spat between lovers, right?
Yeah, just stuff happens at practice.
Right, two brothers slap fighting, right? And everyone knows that if you're going to fight, you should do more slap fight open hand, because as I was taught, if you don't have open hand and if you go with a fist, you might break a finger, and then you won't be able to, if there was a gun involved, you wouldn't be able to pull a trigger. That's what the badasses tell me. The good guys who tell me these things say, Oh, you don't want to hurt your fingers, Emil. But the badasses say, oh, you don't want to hurt your fingers because then you wouldn't be able to pull the trigger. But the thing is, in self defense, it's always open hand technique. So slap fighting can still be dangerous because that heel of the palm is dead, can be deadly in the right situation. Anyway,
Right.
so let us see. I rarely play video on this show, but here let us go to Twitter and play this video because the video speaks for itself. Did you see that? Did you see that? Okay, here's Draymond Green, right? Draymond Green is there, right? Here with my cursor is where Poole is. Draymond is walking away. Everyone is like, no attention is on Green, no attention is on Poole. Now let's look at this. Here's Green. He turns around. You see Green there? Here's Green. Everyone, no one's doing anything. And then look, he comes up to Poole, and look at this. Bump, push away, wham. Did you see that?
Uh-huh.
Now,
And they
tell me,
said that he wasn't hurt, that Poole
yeah,
was not hurt.
well, he may, but if you look at it again, you can see why people are now calling it a sucker punch.
Yeah.
That was about as clearly defined as a sucker punch. Here, like they're off, playing, now here's Green surreptitiously walking up the Poole, bumping up a chest. Poole pushes him off. Now here's the punch. I can't watch it more than one or two times. I just can't watch it more than one or
Well,
two.
you've hit your limit. You know.
I mean, here's my thing. Talk about domestic violence, workplace violence. Violence is violence. The Warriors tried to keep this in-house because you don't want to be embarrassed. You're the championship team, right? You want to not air the dirty laundry. But after a while, there's a reason why the Warriors are thinking about paying hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars to both Draymond Green and Jordan Poole. It's because the public pays tens of millions of dollars to all the various, business enterprises, the games live, the games on TV, the games on radio. People are invested in this. It's suddenly, when you think of it, while it's a private business, it's kind of a public thing too. And I think the Warriors, number one, were wrong to try to keep this under wraps. And number two, I think now they have to deal with it because after anyone sees this, don't you think that someone wants, that if you saw people demanding justice for Jordan Poole, would you be surprised at all?
No, this, yeah. There should be some penalty. There has to be some kind of punishment for Draymond.
They were saying, as of yesterday, they were saying, oh no, Draymond Green, we're not going to suspend him. He's going to be at practice. He made an apology, and that was that. I think
Nah,
something
not
happened.
good enough. Maybe not suspension, but a fine of some sort.
I think someone in the Golden State Warriors front office, that in the media department, maybe a woman who understands that this is violence, and maybe I'm saying a woman because a woman would be number one. All right, I'm generalizing here, but a woman might be more conducive to being sympathetic toward any kind of violence, domestic violence, workplace violence. I mean, some guys might be willing to like shrug it off, saying, "Hey, didn't hurt me. He didn't hurt me. I'm fine." Right? I mean, that's sort of like a guy
I
thing.
can't see how you could take a straight punch like that, even if you're leaning back as a result of being pushed. And the tendency when you've been pushed is to try and right yourself by correcting against the direction of the push. So you're actually setting yourself up
Yeah.
if there's a punch coming. And I cannot imagine that Mr. Poole was not injured in some way.
Well, I bet you he was seen shooting baskets a couple hours later, and the next
Sure,
day,
after ample ice, you know.
and after the next day, they practiced, and Draymond apologized on Thursday. But I get the feeling that someone wanted justice, because if the Golden State Warriors, and they have a kind of a, they're not angelic. I mean, they're not. They're a sports team, right? But they're business, right? If this were to happen in any kind of business, some guy would be fired. Some if you at the university, if that were to happen, I mean, there are grounds for battery, right?
It was a battery.
Yeah,
The definition of a battery straight up
yeah,
is an unwanted touching. So it doesn't have to be violent. And in this instance, you have a very violent unwanted touching. You can't tell me that that was desired or that it was provoked.
yeah.
That's the problem, right? It was unprovoked, at least as far as we can see. Maybe there was some kind of verbal confrontation earlier, and it took a while for obviously Draymond was he might have been stewing
Yeah.
for a while. We don't see the initial confrontation, and it took a couple of minutes, right, for him to
Yeah.
make that move. I mean,
Well,
the video shows it.
yeah, like, all right, go back to the video again, and it does show that they're apart.
Hmm.
I mean, they're apart, and see, Great Green's there. They're like 7 to 8 feet apart. They're setting up for
More like almost 10 feet apart. Yeah.
yeah, and they're setting up for some kind of play, and it looks like they're being talked to by the coach. All attention, Stephen Curry's there now. Draymond just sort of sneaks up on Jordan Poole and then confronts him, face to
And then
face,
he pushes him,
and then Poole's
pushes,
oh
yeah, and then lunges.
yeah. I mean, it's just I just well, first of all, if people have been following the Golden State Warriors for years, and I know I have. I mean, watched the Golden State Warriors when they were playing at Civic Auditorium, and which is years ago. And so I like the fact that now, here comes the bump. I'm playing the video. There's the push, and now here's the punch. Bump,
Yeah.
push, and then punch. It's I just think it's violence. Violence begets violence, and it's just there's just something that's obscene about it. And I
Hmm.
think if you can try to keep it under wraps, and as much as I dislike TMZ and their tactics, I don't know if they paid someone or if someone had the video and was feeling such a sense of because of conscience, said I gotta leak this to somebody. But now just that one tweet has several 100,000. There are other tweets like that, hundreds of that. Millions of people are watching this video, and it will be the talk of the sports world, and not just
Yep.
sports world, but all the world. Because the question will be, what are we going to do to discipline, or what can be done to discipline Draymond Green? If it's in house, I guess there can be no complaint. But once it's out, can someone file? You're the attorney. Can
No, I'm not a practicing attorney. I am not a
all right,
practicing
not a
attorney. I do not hold myself out. I just have a law
all right,
degree
not a practicing attorney. I stand correct.
that is almost 5 decades old.
Okay, all
So
right. But
yeah.
as someone who knows the law, could could,
Yes, thank
could
you.
someone outside look at that and file on behalf of Jordan Poole some kind of complaint?
No. Nope. Person has to be a person of in interest. You have to be engaged in the process, and in this instance, you have to be a person who's actually injured or the target of an attack. And so it would be Poole that has the advan the yeah, he has the advantage of being able to
Wait,
file.
you're saying
Now,
Poole?
now somebody else, another authority like a police authority, if they were witness to the situation, might try to report it to the DA and then it's up to the DA whether or not they want to prosecute. Once it gets to the DA, though, there has to be the DA is going to be looking for a witness that's willing to say that they were harmed, and it could be a fellow team member, but somebody has to come forward as a witness, and at that point, it doesn't matter if Poole is that witness.
Right. Oh, so Poole could be the witness, but if Poole comes out and
Wasn't the
yeah,
witness, and somebody else
yeah.
complained, and they were witnesses to the situation, and they can show that they were harmed. Maybe emotionally. They were stressed out because of the
All right, how
situation.
about this? Someone takes the video, presumably the person who leaked the video, witnessed this and felt traumatized, then that person, man or woman, could then go to the DA and file a complaint.
They could try and see if the DA would take it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not. I mean, I think what's going to happen. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I think now that it's out in the public sphere, I think we're open to seeing the mass public outrage against Draymond Green, against this kind of violence. And if that happens, then I think the Warriors are going to have to do the tough thing, which is say, all right, this is out in the public. We tried to keep it inside, but it's out in the public and we're going to have to do something about it. Right. Or,
Yep.
or the commissioner, the NBA commissioner pretty much can do anything he wants. Adam Silver usually does the right thing, but in instances like this, it's usually the team's call. And if the team wants to pursue, it pursues. If the team doesn't want to pursue, then that's their thing. But now that's when things were under wraps, when things were still at
Right.
PR hold. But now things aren't under that PR hold, and now it's out there. And now here's the truth: the video is powerful. Millions of people are watching it. Can you ever root for Draymond Green again?
And he's had very, let's say, undesirable
Yeah.
behaviors
Checkered.
on the court. On the court.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you can go back to 2016. There was this flare up with the coach, right? When they're in
Right.
Oklahoma City. There was the LeBron James, showing the crotch thing, game 5 during one of the playoffs. There was the Kevin Durant blow up in 2018. I mean, and then this last one. And I mean, they they run the gamut from something that is like over the top to something that's just, oh, that's Draymond. Like when he trash talks or
Yeah.
does what. But he has a history.
Sure. Including fouling out completely and then getting technical,
Yeah.
and in some instances, I think he caused the loss of game.
Oh yeah. Well,
Yeah.
this is
So
the thing. I mean, there's one thing to say. Okay, a game is a game, and if it was just a game, you could say, okay, yeah, now we can be like good sports and shake hands and play together as a team. But that's when we thought it was, as was reported Wednesday, a slight altercation at practice. But now that we see that it is a full blown sucker punch, I don't know. Do we like
I
hug
think
and
fans could you and I could email or put it up on Twitter, but I think directly emailing the team and saying you got to discipline the guy. Uh,
well, I don't know if it gets to the point with me where I'll never watch a game again, but I'll tell you, it does sour me on pro sports. There's a lot of things that sour. I as long as everything is good, I get along. I'll watch the games. Oh, that's my team. You feel good. Then a player gets hurt, and there's like maybe a failure of the concussion protocol to protect that player, as in we saw with in
Tua's
football.
case in Tua.
Really Tagovailoa, right? Or you have a case like people are now talking about, uh, how black coaches are are pretty much eliminated from getting up into the higher echelons of the coaching world in the NFL. The racism inherent. That's no good. That sort of makes you say, uh, I don't know. I mean, sports is good, but here, the talk with the Poole and Jordan Poole and the Draymond Green thing is both are up for these massive extensions, 130 million maybe for Poole, and Draymond Green could get, he's not happy with a $26 million option. He wants more. He's a free agent, you know, and
Well,
usually this is
yeah. Do you think they would consider the fact that he's a free agent and maybe let him go?
well, I think what's going to happen. Well, I don't know what's going to happen, but I think what people are talking about how money has become an issue. People see Poole, this 23-year-old hotshot, is going to make 130 million. It's changed his demeanor, right? He's still the extension has to be done by October 17th, so that's on the front burner. Green is 32, and his player option is 26 million. He wants the extension for a full max, which is years and millions of dollars. But now this happens, and I don't know. He might just say, "Well, I'll just take my max, 26 million, and I'll be a pain in the ass the entire year." I think at some point the Warriors have to figure out, man, Draymond has given a lot to the franchise over the years, but he is now a liability.
Yeah, yeah. The question is how much of a liability, and then you have to value that. You have to get into the balancing of the
Yeah, but
equities, as it were.
Dan, the balancing is all talking about winning in sports, right? Winning in sport. How about just winning in the overall humanity? Where if you promote green and save green's butt, you are saying it's okay to bully sometime. We won't make an example of you, Draymond, but you were a bully, and I think some kind of punishment is needed. Like he's got to go away. He's got to go to the woodshed, and I think he's got to stay in the woodshed for I think a while. And he's 32. Look, if I were the commissioner for something like this, workplace violence, which should never be condoned, they banned an owner for sexual harassment, for just unseemly workplace environment, you know, uh, situation in Arizona.
It's called hostile environment.
Hostile environment, exactly. But they kicked him out of the sport. I think we should be at the same kind of level with one of the star players, especially since you kick out an owner. The difference between an owner and a star player is the owner usually made his money somewhere else. The
Yeah.
star player is made his money in sports, and guess where a lot of star players are going? They're going into ownership because hey, I got all this money, I made it in sports. That's all I'm good at. Maybe I can run a team. Maybe they could use me. Buster Posey's in baseball. Uh, Jordan, Michael Jordan's in ownership. Where did they get their Magic Johnson's in ownership? Where did they get their money? They got their money from the franchise. So I think at some point, it wouldn't surprise me if this whole situation doesn't get to the point where, boy, we kicked out somebody in Arizona for having creating a hostile environment. Shouldn't we kick out Draymond for creating a hostile workplace environment by bullying a much younger, much smaller player? I mean, Draymond's like 6'8", 6'9". The Poole is like 6'3", 6-inch difference, like maybe 30-pound difference. He's also what? Draymond Green is 32, Poole is 23, 9 years difference. Draymond should be showing some maturity, and he didn't.
There's another possibility, but again, it would be internal, and I can't imagine. It'd be interesting to look at the contracts of the player contracts because these sports are aggressive sports, and they're naturally violent. And I mean, football obviously,
Yeah.
but basketball to a lesser degree, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
it's a
So
contact sport.
yeah. So much less. I mean,
That's right.
you can get fouled for just touching a guy.
That's right. For what is my yeah, I know, and sometimes it's really ridiculous, right?
They don't always call it. Yeah.
Yeah. The My point is that I can't imagine that those contracts don't have some kind of clause that either prohibits outright violent team intra team violence, or displays of anger, etc. Because that's anti-team uh, unity.
Yeah.
It can cause divisiveness within the team, and a lot of people intentionally cause divisiveness because they want to get traded. Those kinds of circumstances have come up.
Yeah.
There are a number of excellent players in the NBA that I believe that you have used that technique to be able to leave a team that they wanted to break contract with and get traded. So, like I said, if he's going to be free agent, could Draymond be doing something like that? But the problem is when people see him as a risk in acting in that manner, who's going to want him?
Well, I mean, the Warriors still sort of want him, which is kind of disgusting in some ways, because like you were hitting at earlier, there ought to be some kind of morals sort of thing, a
Hmm.
morals clause that says if you hit, if you are violent. I mean, you could see it clearly in the case of a domestic violence situation.
Hmm.
This is more workplace violence, and because it's in a game setting or a practice setting, you think, oh well, no, there's something okay with there's nothing okay with this. I mean, it
No,
was okay if it was just someone writing a story in the sports section saying there was an altercation. But now that we see that, in fact, it wasn't an altercation, it
right.
was a sucker punch, and it
Also,
was
the person who disclosed, what really happened by sharing the video,
mm,
were they subject to any kind of NDA, any kind of requirement that if they had privately acquired
who
uh,
knows? I mean,
material?
I think that's a good point. A lot of these practices are open. I know
Mhm.
that when I covered the Warriors, I did for a couple of years. I'd cover them before games, and you could pretty much go with your phone and start shooting away and then putting it up. Social media. I mean, that's the thing. The Warriors have always had a pretty good PR department. Practices weren't closed, they were open. They'd allowed the media to come in for some of them. Some didn't. I mean, it gets to be kind of incessant. You end up being kind of like, well, the players are making, 10, 20, 30 million dollars, and I'm making my, my journalist wage. I can't make it to everything. So you miss some things, but I think you're right. Uh, I, I doubt, I mean, who knows? It all depends on who leaked it and what they were, what kind of rules they were under. If they were an employee, they're not going to be working for the Warriors anymore. If
Yeah,
they
that's right.
if they were an intern, I don't know if TMZ is going to divulge that, but I will say this: whoever did divulge it and gave, I think, should be credited for letting people see the truth, because this is the thing about sports: it's showbiz. It
Yep.
showed, and on some level, you'll say, "Oh, come on, it's not show. They're real athletes are participating." Look, showbiz is wrestling. Showbiz is WWF. Yeah, this is not WWF. However, it's showbiz, and there is an aspect of not
I
realness.
can't see how anybody can make a rational argument that it's not showbiz. I mean, you show me that person, and I will
That
say, I don't call that many people stupid, but in this instance,
wait, that basketball is not showbiz, or the W.
it's All sports is showbiz, man. All
Well,
sports is showbiz. And anybody who says it's not showbiz is an idiot. Yeah.
no, I disagree. I disagree. I think it's not like showbiz is, like I said, WWF. It's scripted. It's not real. The winner is predetermined. You don't know who's going to win tonight's game in baseball in the first round of the baseball playoffs. Yeah, I was rooting for the Cleveland Guardians over the Tampa Bay Rays. I didn't know they were going to win.
That
That way,
doesn't make it not showbiz. The fact that it's competitive and that you don't know the outcome, that doesn't make it not showbiz.
well, all right. Look,
You know?
there's a showbiz aspect, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
well,
I'm going to
showbiz.
keep needling away at you until you just accept the fact that it's
No,
all
no, no,
showbiz, man.
no. There's a showbiz aspect in that you don't get paid $30 million if it's not showbiz. You don't get paid the amount of money that a Tom Cruise would make in in all his thunder, all his loud, noisy jet plane movies. You don't make that kind of money if
Okay.
it's not showbiz. All right, grant you that. However, it's not artificial. It's totally real. We know in showbiz, like in a movie, the outcome. We know it's sort of fake. We know that the
You got to
blood
be
isn't
careful. You got to be careful with that. It's totally real stuff, man. Point
well.
shavers
Look,
don't exist. You saying point shavers don't exist? That is a
well,
myth.
uh,
Come
there
on,
are
man.
point shavers. How they got to be caught, and you got to prove them. And those that have been proven have been exposed. Like there was a ref who was part of that deal in college and to a degree in pros. But I will say this, based my definition of showbiz is uh, movies are one thing, but you know pro sports is quite another, except for wrestling. Wrestling is definitely showbiz. It's preordained. It's good guy, bad guy. But in some of these things, this is like a reality show. It's showbiz. Yes, the money's there for showbiz, but it's real and it's honest. And the honesty part, that's what I'm going for. And if there's, what they were trying to do with the Warriors was they're going to try to hold down this bad stuff that happened in practice with Draymond Green. They tried to hold it down. They tried to not let it out. Someone let it out, and
Yeah,
that
I,
was
I can
exertion.
meet you. I can meet you sort of in the middle. I'll meet you about 2/3 of the way over. But of course it's not all showbiz in the sense that it's being put on, right? And that it's even if it's not completely predetermined, that
Mm,
it's about the show, right? It's about certain kinds of behavior that bring attention or that build image. But man,
right.
a lot of it is image. A lot of it is image.
I know
Look
it,
at
and we don't know if Draymond was doing this because he wanted to be tough. Maybe this was his idea of showbiz. If that's his idea of showbiz, then I reject it. I reject it,
out of practice session.
I say, look, we're still human beings playing a game, playing a sport, and when it comes to sports, and sportsmanship, we play the game, we end the game, we shake hands, we go about our way. That is, in me, in my mind, that's how sports should be played. As soon as you bring in these violent aspects, and this is what I mean about why it's important and why it's more than just a throwaway story. It's a real story because this
No,
is
it is definitely not a throwaway story. I mean, the fact that you're spending this much time on it is completely rational.
oh
It's
yeah.
you
Well,
can't
we
you
know that
can't yeah.
we
Yeah.
know
Sometimes you get a little emotional about things like this, but this is completely rational. This it has great social implications, right? Because the guy is a multimillionaire who made his money, in sports and specifically on this team, and the team has a an image to hold up, as well as you got to play off Curry. One of my best lines I ever heard was when he was still even looking younger. Was yeah, uh, Stephen Curry got carded for milk. You
yeah.
know, I thought that was a great line,
Well,
but
he Yeah.
And
People
then
are.
and you got him squeaky clean, and they really careful about managing their image, right?
Yeah.
His wife's as well. Now that she's got businesses going and things like that, and then you got Draymond, right? So that he injures that image. He injures that marketability aspect of what a team's image is, right?
See, I think you're right there. I think what happens now is the ownership, because the team, this is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise.
Absolutely.
The Warriors are making so much money, and no matter how much luxury tax they have to pay, they can afford it. They can pay it. They have the money. They will try to plead poverty, but they have the money. So you might say, "Oh, come on, they're rich, but you know, the luxury tax is obscene, maybe, but they are making billions upon billions of dollars.
Right.
They can afford it. They
Why
can
did
afford,
they move back to the city?
yeah, they can afford it.
The
They
whole point of moving back to San Francisco was to
Yes,
capture that market.
and they could do it. And so now I wouldn't be surprised if the loyalty to Draymond is suddenly really, uh,
Diminished,
yeah,
substantially diminished.
greatly diminished. I would say here was this is a scenario that I envision. Adam Silver comes in and says this is workplace bullying. It's akin to what we objected to in Arizona with the Phoenix Suns. We kicked that owner out. We're going to suspend Draymond Green for 3 years. He'll be 35 when he's
Holy shit! That's kind of
well.
extreme.
I mean, well, look, you kicked out the owner. The owner can't come back. He's done with basketball. You know, Draymond Green has been enriched. Far beyond his dreams. If you say, you're suspended for 3 years, you can go talk on TV if you want. You can do anything, but you just can't play in a basketball court, an NBA basketball court, and you can't be in a locker room. I mean, I would see something like that would be pretty. It would seem extreme to some, but ask the millions of people who are watching that video if that isn't
Yeah,
too,
what's
too
going to happen is all of the people that hate on the Warriors are going to say, "Yeah, yeah, get rid of Draymond because he is an asset. Uh, he's one of the best, if not the best, in certain years. He
yeah,
has been the best defensive player on the
yeah, but
court.
but
That's it. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, don't bang your hand on the
Oh, I'm
table.
sorry.
You knock the microphone with your
Okay.
passion. But
Yeah.
but right, see, right. But here's what you just did. You went back talking about basketball. You
Right.
forgot about we're talking about this on a human level. We're talking about this as a a a, a strike against bullying, a strike against violence, a strike against bad behavior that has no business on a a a professional basketball court. And that's why you can't begin to bring up, well, he led the league in defensive stops. His stats were, off the charts. This he did this for that. You
Uh,
know, all of that is irrelevant. The sports statistics are irrelevant if you just talk about him in terms of let's look at him as a human being. Let's look. Why was he bullying Jordan Poole? What does this say to the younger player? He might be an asset to the Warriors as an older mentor, teacher, that kind of thing. As his days as a real productive basketball player decline. But he's still fun, he's still productive. It's just that he has acted in this really it's unfathomable considering how important he is and the kind of leader he is for him to act the way he did. He did it to himself. I say 3-year suspension. Let him come back when he's 35 and look for a max contract. He'll be playing for the minimum. You look at other players who are older, other players who, no one gives a contract to. I'm talking about older players like Dwight Howard. He's thinking about retiring. I mean, he was once seen as Superman a few years back. I'm
yeah.
talking about players like Jeremy Lin, who can't play anywhere. He's got to go to China, and he was insanity. I
Right.
think I think that Draymond Green has done it to himself. All right, if 3 years is too harsh, give him a 2 year suspension. Let him come back at 30. He'll be 35, and then see if he can mount a comeback. And if he doesn't, he can go play for Russia, or he can go play for a Greek team. He can go play in the
No, no,
Philippines.
no. He wouldn't do Russia. You know,
Yeah, he may not do.
because he
Okay,
might not come back. He might not be able to come back.
let him play for a Filipino team. He'll play
Yeah,
Philippine
that
basketball.
there you go.
I think that's it for Dream. His way out, he can go play in Japan. What was he saying when he was in Japan the other day?
Yeah,
I look forward to coming back and playing in Japan. He can start
right,
playing for Japan next month.
right. Okay.
That I mean, I think I'm all for justice for Jordan Poole.
I think, yeah. I think 3 years is too extreme. I think
I
a year is good. 2 years maybe,
Yeah, but
but
2 years
yeah.
not too much. I mean, but look, you're
You know, if the idea is to punish him and hopefully change his behavior, okay, then I think you really got to make it so that he's willing to change his behavior. If you just whack him and kick him out for 3 years, then that's just going to make him angrier. You
Dan,
know?
Dan, Draymond Green has been a flashpoint for years.
Yeah,
Draymond
yeah.
Green has been a liability, borderline liability for years. He hasn't learned yet. He's only going to explode more. He's a danger. He's a danger. I mean, that is really the best argument. He's a danger because you don't know what he's going to do. And if you can't trust him, you can't have him on your payroll.
Yeah, I disagree with your describing it as a case of not knowing what he's going to do. He's a danger because he is a risk of that potential to do violence. That's what it is. The risk of the potential for violence, right? The risk of the violence itself is always there. So it's not a question of it's not as simple as saying you don't know what he's going to do. It's more like you don't know when he's going to do violence. You know,
Yeah.
he's
Well,
it's likely to happen. There's a probability, right?
yeah.
Given his behavior on the court, right?
I, I just hope that people don't understand that there's a problem and then go back to, well, he's such a good basketball player. Yes, but he's a rotten person. He's
Yeah.
a rotten. I mean, people try to say, oh, he's a really a good person, except when he beats up on someone much smaller and younger. Except, I mean, it may be different if he was beating up on a woman, or if he was beating up on like an innocent, some helpless person. But he's beating up on a teammate. That should make you more concerned. That means this guy doesn't know any limits. And
Wait a minute. It's okay if he beat on a woman or beat on some innocent person. That's all right. But teammate is no good. Come
no, no,
on, man.
no, I didn't.
That was a little upside down, Emil.
No, I didn't say.
I
No,
think
no,
you
you
took
mis.
a trip to the upside down for a moment.
No, you misinterpreted. I said,
That's what you said, dude.
it's one
Run
thing
the tape back.
if he beats up on a woman, if he beats up on someone smaller, and that is clearly wrong. But this is even. But I'm talking from the viewpoint of a sports executive who's trying to save Draymond Green and wants to go like you to Draymond Green's stats. Well, statistically, he's so good. It's the rebuttal to that is yes, but he is capable of beating up some of your best younger players. He's capable of really disabling some of your other good aspect or assets. The
Yeah,
young players.
he could have caused serious injury. You know, I mean,
Yeah,
once you start,
right.
once you start doing violence like that,
Yeah,
you don't know where it's going to end up. I mean, it's the same as pulling the trigger on a gun. The bullet comes out, and it's going to keep going until it destroys something and spends its energy. That's the way it works. And so when you let go of a punch like that, and the guy, he didn't even have his hands up.
yeah.
I mean, it
It
was
was.
a straight up, straight punch right in the head. He could have fallen backwards and hit his skull. You know, he could have gone unconscious. Could have hit it on the edge of one of
Total.
the seats.
I,
It's terrible. That was
I,
a terrible act, no
I,
question.
I think what this does, Jordan Poole now has tremendous leverage over the Warriors.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, he does.
Because
That's true.
they were
That's
looking
true.
at a $130 million contract, multi-year, 130 million, because that was the
Now
market.
now he gets to say, okay, you're going to keep him here.
Yeah,
I feel threatened.
yeah, exactly.
I need more, or I'm gonna go where there's not people like him.
How about this? Jordan Poole. I mean, he's closer to a lot of the younger players. A lot of the younger players are saying, "Damn, I can't cross Draymond. I'll get sucker punched." I mean, it is a virus. It is a
Yeah, yeah.
virus to the team, and I I always thought that Draymond was trouble, but now that I've seen I was willing to say, okay, maybe he gets suspended for a month or a couple games, but the Warriors weren't willing to do that.
No, they weren't gonna do anything.
Yeah, now that I see the tape, I say the commissioner's got to get involved. People have got to sue. Someone has got to stop Draymond and let him go talk on his podcast. Let him go do his thing. But I assure you, if he was on TNT ready to clock Ernie Johnson or ready to beat up anybody on television or on his podcast, he wouldn't last. He wouldn't
No,
last.
yeah.
And so look, last 30 seconds on this. Where do you think it goes?
I think it's going to be in the news for a while. I think there's going to be a lot of fan feedback, and I think it should be strong feedback. I think people should be talking about at least a fine, if not suspension.
I mean,
Uh,
look,
yeah.
we're all for nonviolence. I think we should be for nonviolence. And if you are for,
Sports is supposed to be a substitute for war.
well, yeah, it's supposed to be a metaphor, right? It's not supposed to be the war, but it's supposed to help cool us down. But
Yeah.
when it wasn't, and you start to see the same kind of violence in real life, then you got to say, hey, wait a minute, stop. This is showbiz, like my friend Dan says. It's supposed
Yeah,
we have to part as friends. We have to shake hands. We have to exchange our jerseys and hug each other.
yeah. I actually saw some really good sportsmanship at the football games.
Yeah, I
And I've seen people know that they really hit a guy hard and help pick him up from the opposing team. I've seen people do that. You
yeah,
know.
but I'll tell you, it's not like that always. And when you start condoning a sucker punch like this within your own team,
Yeah.
I think it's bad. I think Adam Silver's got to step in. I would like to see Draymond suspended for minimum 1 year, maximum 3 years, off either just away, doing penance, playing in Japan, and then coming back to the NBA because you cannot have this. You cannot have this on your team where teammates, you can openly disagree with your teammates. Like Ben Simmons, when he was, in contract negotiations with the 76ers. Ultimately, he left. But no one was fighting each other. Uh, you got to be mature to make your tens of millions of dollars. And if you're not mature and you're a gangster and you're going to like hit someone in the sucker punch,
Oh, Emil, you're so idealistic. You want people to actually live like adult, rational
I think
human
the,
beings.
if the Warriors in
People,
the
people with principles. Yeah. I mean, wow.
if the Warriors in the NBA don't act, what they are doing is enriching a person who is a bad man. He's
Okay.
a bad man, and he needs to be disciplined.
Yep.
Fortunately, in this case, uh, maybe they'll have an agreement that no one sues, but maybe all he has to do is just go away from basketball for a year and think about things, undergo meditation, undergo nonviolence training.
Yeah, that's where I would do, and then see whether or not that affects his game.
Well, it will, but that's the penalty. That's the penalty. He loses
Yeah.
a year or two. It's got to be serious because if you don't do
There's
this,
there are other great players that have been confronted with stuff that I think I wouldn't say it's okay to punch the guy, but where I think it could have gone that way very easily,
Yeah.
and they immediately stop themselves. They halt themselves. They back off. They don't even need their teammates to pull them off or any of that stuff. They
It's
they just immediately shut down and say, "I'm not going there." Okay.
it's maturity. It's maturity. And if you're going to be made into a multimillionaire by the NBA, that's the least you owe your benefactors. You got to say, hey, look, guys, thank you for the million. Because Draymond Green's a millionaire many
Hmm.
times
Hmm.
already. He's enriched himself. He needs to go away. He needs to go away. And we will end this topic and move on.
That was more than 30 seconds, but it's okay. It's your show.
Yeah. All right. So we're moving on to all right, Filipino American History Month. And I talked about early at the beginning about Roger, the Supreme Court Justice Roger Taney, the Dred Scott decision, and
The prior
this
Dow decision, yeah.
the Dow. And I just wanted to now, did you know much about the Dow decision before?
No, I learned about it. Oh, maybe just a few months ago, a
Yeah.
couple months ago. Somebody forwarded it to me. I think it was Theo
Yeah. Yeah.
Theo
And
Gonzalez.
Theo, our mutual friend, I got it from Theo also. He gave me something. And then I went in, did some research, verified USV Dow. And my God, there it was. I mean, it really is one of the first, if not the first, justifications of here are white Christians as the master race in the United States. That to me, that was scary. That in 1840, that was the thinking. But it maybe that's just the way it is, considering the Constitution, considering the way America was.
Yeah, it's just I watched your earlier statement about the Dow case, and then particularly interested in the reactions that you got.
Mhm.
Um, who were the people that were reacting in a meh kind of a dismissive fashion that didn't see? Was there an ethnic?
Yeah, they were mostly white. It was a white
Okay,
audience and a white crowd, and it was like, yeah, you're going to talk about USV Dow and Dred Scott, but like I said in my piece, how many people can talk about Dred Scott for at least 10 seconds and really capture what it's all about? They
right.
might, oh, it's about slavery. Oh, it's about didn't that spark off the Civil War? I mean,
Yep.
that's about it because we don't teach it really well in the United States, and we should.
Well, we don't teach any of that stuff really well in the United States. We don't teach Marbury versus Madison well in the United States.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
all Brown versus Board of Education, Plessy versus
yeah,
Ferguson.
yeah. People talk. People talk now. A lot of the people in liberal journalism, right, are saying they're talking about
Yeah,
Madisonian democracy. I don't. I don't. I think probably less than what 15% of Americans can readily define what Madisonian democracy is. Right.
I think it's way less than that. I mean, look, you mean Madison as in Oscar Madison, the odd couple, or Madison Square Garden? I mean, come on, Dan. I mean, it's like we're talking about America here.
Yeah.
You walk the street,
Oh, that's so bleak. That is so bleak.
if you walk the streets with the globe and ask people on the streets to point out where America is, I bet you they wouldn't be able to find it.
Oh no, that's terrible. That's really bad.
It's true though. I mean, well, I think it's on here. I mean, here's Africa. Here's
Nah,
just,
they got
if
to know.
if you find it in the globe, I just don't think. I think a lot of people wouldn't, and I think those are the native born. I mean, this is the thing. There's a tremendous amount of ignorance in this country,
Sure,
and
we have failed educationally. We have failed. This society has failed miserably.
right, and just because you have a little bit of education, a
Right.
little bit, you are perceived as an elitist just for having a little. Yes, I'm sorry, I'm an
Well, you
elitist.
mean are you saying that American society is overall not only racist, it's anti intelligentsia, and not only that, anti-intellectualism. Are you
Yeah,
actually making that allegation?
yes, I am. America is anti-intellectual, and this is why Pol Pot, when he killed all the
Oh,
when he committed genocide against his own people,
they wiped out the top. Yeah, educated. Yeah,
he
they were the first. They were
would
the
go
first.
after the intelligentsia. I mean
Yeah.
that's the way the autocrats do it. And
Well, yeah, we're going to cover this a little later, but you go after the journalists, as and
yeah,
if
well,
you have anything that even approximates a reasonably free press, and so we'll go there. We'll go there a little bit later.
yeah, well, this is a problem. So anyway, I thought it was fun that this Filipino American History Month, instead of talking about 1587 and the first Filipinos to Morro Bay, which we've talked a
Yeah,
number
there's
of times.
questions about whether or not that's geographically accurate, but
Yeah,
I mean, the rest of the history is valid history, right?
yeah, but I think also it's important that we talk about Larry Itliong, 1965, the Grape Strike, and it's good important to talk about the first wave, the real first wave of Filipinos, the Manong generation, our
Right,
dads coming here.
right,
But I think it was interesting to note about the the Dow decision and what it meant to Dred Scott, because a lot of people would think automatically, oh, Dred Scott about a slave suing for his freedom in Missouri. The decision on the case had to be based on some kind of African American or maybe a Native American. That would be the assumption if you ask someone. And what do you know? The case that decided the Dred Scott decision involved a Filipino in
yep,
America.
yep.
And I think that's worth saying because it shows that African Americans, Filipinos in America, people of color, this binds us. We were not white males. We were not white Protestant males. That was the distinction. You had to be white and Protestant. I added the male part, but it's really just white Protestants.
Right.
We weren't we weren't white Protestants.
Yeah, yeah. Being Catholic and we don't even know if he was Catholic or not. You
No, but
know,
he was
but
baptized. He was baptized. We do know it.
that
The
was not okay.
Yeah, it
Uh,
was. It was in actually in the Taney 1840 writing. I didn't include it, but he was baptized, but he wasn't white. He was born in Manila, baptized,
oh, okay. No, that makes sense.
raised religious, but he
Yeah,
was
well, being Catholic wasn't being Christian enough all the way up until the 1960s.
right. Oh, I said
Remember all of the reaction to Kennedy?
right. I said white Protestant. I really meant white Christian. You're right. That's right. But the people in the audience that I was talking about this and who sort of rolled their eyes, they were ethnic. They were Jewish, and I don't know if they're Christians, but they were white primarily. But the the white Jewish folks in the audience, they should realize that they're in this too because they were excluded.
Right.
The guidelines for exclusion were you white and Christian, and if you weren't, bye bye. If you are, you're in the club. That's that was the significance, and to mention it on Filipino American Heritage Month or Filipino American History Month, the significance there is, hey, we're all in this together against the white Christians. That
Well, yeah, I have had problems. I haven't had problems with all Protestant groups, but
mhm,
I have had problems, particularly with the that beginning with the generation that considered themselves born again.
yeah,
I had problems with some small numbers of people that claimed to be, ecclesiastical,
mm,
in their belief system and all that. But what I saw was that they were embracing a uh, a constituency that was very white and very white superioristic.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say they were white supremacists necessarily.
Well,
Okay.
white superiors, they do use the term. Taney, in his decision in 1840, uses the term that the whites were, that the people of color, that the Malays,
Right.
meaning
Yeah.
Tao, who was Filipino, was
Right.
inferior, and that people in color in general were inferior.
Yeah.
So,
There you go.
so the opposite of inferior, superior,
Superior.
and they're
Yeah.
superior. Yeah.
And
So,
that was common. That was common. You
yeah,
know, it was common also in the discussion of miscegenation and the, obviously anti-miscegenation laws.
yeah, yeah.
Frankly, it's probably still a well um, articulated belief among a substantial portion of the American population.
Well, I don't know if articulated is the right word, but it's a held belief that is often suppressed and not talked about publicly, but certainly talked about publicly more since Trump, wouldn't you say?
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's being articulated a lot more out in the open now,
Right.
say
Right.
in the last, 6 years.
Yeah. Well,
Whereas
so how do you explain, the slide of Latinos, the decline of their affiliation with the Democratic Party, and their increase in affiliation with the Republican Party?
all right, I would explain it this way. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy. That is it. I mean, it is all about faith and religion, and it goes back to, hey, if you're white and Protestant or white and Christian, you're in. All right, so
Right.
these are brown Christians, and they're going to make a case for brown because the Christian thing is their point, their common ground. But I think if you look at it, yeah, those Christian values, pro life, uh, you know,
I have some people who are within the first degree cousins, right,
yeah,
who are evangelicals,
yeah,
and who's sometimes their children, at least on one occasion, homeschooled their kids.
mhm,
And of course, in my conversations with them, I said, well, what do you think is going to happen when they go on to college? Because they're going to suddenly be exposed to all of this stuff, regardless of which college they go to. They could go to a religious based, cloistered institution, and they're still going to get exposed to
yeah.
a lot of external stuff. And so, it's all kind of up to them after that, and
Hey, look, once your kid goes to college, I learned this when all my kids went to college. Boy, trying to get information out of them from anybody, the school, them, their friend, everything is like, well, you got to take it up with them. It's their life, and it is their
it
life,
is their life.
and you got to get used to that. And it's like your stewardship ends at 18, and then they're the bird that flies off. Hopefully, they're flying in the back of the Holy Spirit, going on and on. But most of the time, they're just doing their own thing, and that's fine. That's fine. We
Okay.
taught them what we taught them, and
I got to look up the most constrictive rule and interpretation of the term blasphemy before,
hey, the
I
Holy
know where
Spirit.
you should spend part of your Saturday in a church reciting the Confiteor Deo.
Oh, the confiteor. Oh, oh.
Confiteor Deo Omnipotens Dei. Anyway,
So Dan, all right. So I what can I say? But I think that we're talking about the whole thing with Filipino American History Month. We'll talk more in subsequent weeks. We're going to talk more about hopefully
yeah.
that exhibit, but
I can
also
understand. I can understand white folks being dismissive. I can understand everybody being dismissive, but what would irritate me most is Filipinos being dismissive. That would
uh,
irritate me most.
I well that that bothers me too because some Filipinos would say, well, they would say, well, that's an American thing. We're Filipinos, and we came in 1965. Who cares what happened in 1840? Who
Yeah.
cares? I mean, it's like,
A
all
lot of
right,
my students didn't, who are immigrants themselves, and therefore are 1.5s. their families came after martial law.
Sure. Oh, I
You know, I
know.
mean, that's how
Yeah. What are
they
you
came
talking
after
about?
85. They came, you know.
Yeah. 65 to 85. Yeah.
Yeah,
65.
some of them came in 90. I have one master's student, and you know, I'm pretty sure that he said that his family didn't come until 1990.
Yeah. We are talking about different generations coming to history. And then suddenly, you take off your sport coat and it reveals like a lion's cloth, like Fred Flintstone. And suddenly it's like you're in the, you're a dinosaur or
Is
in
that a
the,
lion's cloth or loin cloth? What are we
well,
talking about here?
well,
Is it the same thing? It's a lion cloth,
well,
but it's a loin cloth?
it's both. I was thinking of how would you describe what Fred Flintstone wears? His vestment, his tunic. It's a tunic made of an animal skin, I think.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah. It was some kind of
polka
cat
dot.
skin. Yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
then I'm just thinking that that's the prehistoric look that I know because I was inculcated as a very young man watching Fred and Barney. That I have to dress like that, not like Wilma and Betty, but like Fred and Barney. That was my gender my gender education uh,
Okay,
as a prehistoric. Oh, we're prehistoric Filipinos, Dan. That's it. We're
okay.
pre. There was no history until after 1985.
Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Though, well, that was one of you know, one of Manong Fred Cordova's criticisms of post 65 arrivals is that they think history started with them.
And I guess you can make it easy and say, "Oh, I don't care about all that other stuff." I mean, it's good to know, right? I mean, you can say history doesn't really begin until 1898 with the Philippine American War, and like not care about all the other times when the Philippines was free and feudal or semi-free and feudal. Well, they weren't free because the Spanish were there, but when you start Filipino American history, maybe it is the way history is being dismissed. Maybe your people are right to say, well, I came in 1985 and that's the history I begin with. 1985, I begin with the ouster of Marcos and Cory Aquino's rise, and then I just forget about the Philippines and I talk
Right.
about Philippines in America, which were non-existent.
Yeah, there's some families that do that. Yeah, there are some people who try to cut entirely. I mean, they're in direct opposition to 90% of the immigrant population, which is in a constant activity of nostalgia and
Yeah.
trying to recreate right elements of their culture from the Philippines, and that in and of itself is problematic. Uh,
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, because when Filipino American history is, oh, let's get together and we'll celebrate Philippine culture and let's bring out the Spanish stuff. Uh, you're it's counterproductive to what you really want to get across in Philippine American History Month. And then like you said, you celebrate the nostalgia and then you're thinking about going back and then you really are going backwards. So, Dan, let's bring up where we are now. I mean, because uh, a lot of people, I think Ferdinand Marcos and Ferdinand Marcos Jr., they are part of Filipino American history.
Absolutely.
Yeah, in terms of their relationship to America and people from the Philippines coming here so that people view the Philippines from the United States and that creates a history of how people viewed what happened, say between the 60s and 70s and 80s, regardless of whether or not you just arrived here in the 80s. You could look back and see how America engaged with the Philippines. So right now we have Bongbong Marcos Jr., who is the president, and just within the first 100 days of his presidency, 50 years after martial law, we have two murders in the first 100 days, two murders of journalists.
Yep.
And uh, I saw some people online. They're really upset. They want people to know about this. People should know about this. Um, you can, there the journalist who was killed the other day, Percival Mabasa, known as Percy Lapid, he was killed on
Yeah,
Monday.
interesting name.
Yeah, Percy.
I mean, I would pronounce it mabasa, which means could get wet.
Okay. Well, I said Mabasa.
Yeah. Well, no, that's all right. I mean, wherever you put the syllable accent,
Yeah,
I don't mind. But mabasa, means could get wet.
could get wet. I don't.
Yeah.
If that's one of those Ma words.
Yeah, ma is a morphemic, modifier. Basa is the root word.
Yeah, I don't know Tagalog as well grammatically, but I know I like I said I'm like the Philippines, 7,200 islands. I know 7,200 words. I know how to put them together. Um, just like the Philippines.
Yeah, well, there's only about 7,123 because of ocean rise.
Well, see, yeah, that brings the Philippines fortunately into the modern day because now they have to do something about climate change. But
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, it always flooded every year in the Manila area, especially right next to the airport.
yeah,
Okay, you
well,
can depend on it, right? And
well,
then they still keep doing it.
Well, look, this is a good question to come up. After Hurricane Ian, the questions come up: should people in Florida continue to build if you know that it's
Hell
going?
no. They should the federal government and the state government should offer them relief for the ownership of their land and not rebuild in the same place. You only have two choices. You don't build in the same place or you absolutely build differently.
Yeah,
And what these people do is they put up prefab homes and they put up conventional design housing with the typical roof, pitched roof for the rain because it rains a lot down there. Okay, and
yeah.
and they're going to get wiped out every time.
Again, and these storms are coming more frequently, and the damage is rising.
Right.
So I first saw that question: should people continue to build, or maybe it's time to not build? And I thought the other day, I said, okay, these people should not build. They should be given new land, maybe someplace in Oklahoma or someplace in North Dakota.
Somewhere where it's dry.
Yeah, dry.
They
But
want the ocean front, man. They want to be next to the ocean.
all right, so put them in a river. I didn't look. Same, same question. What made me think of it is this question about Manila. You mentioned Manila and losing island or the Philippines.
Oh yeah.
We got to be thinking, or they got to be thinking over there about, well, what do we do there?
A
You know,
lot. Well, the ecologically oriented people have been talking about that for the last 30 years. I mean,
a
it's like,
long time, a long.
there have been scientists in the United States that have been talking about it for the last 70 years. I mean, I
But now,
remember being a little kid and there were scientists who were warning about the effects of pollution.
yeah. Well, so you need leadership, strong leadership that's going to suggest, there's going to be a direction that the country takes because of these climate uh,
Sure.
emergencies, but I don't see it. I don't see it. And then this is just one of the many problems that the Philippines has, and but the biggest problem I think is the fact that you have the son of an autocrat who's ruling, who shouldn't be there, but he's there. You've got the daughter of the previous autocrat, Duterte, who's vice president, and you have the Philippines sort of trying to decide just how much of the iron fist is going to be shown, just how much of an iron fist of this rule is going to be exposed to people. Because right now, as I said, you got two journalists, radio journalists, who were killed within the first 100 days.
Right.
I think if all we do is just expose that and say you got Percy Mabasa, the uh, Lapid, Percy Lapid, you got all these other journalists. There's a second journalist who was killed, or a first journalist who was killed. Name escapes me now, but uh, if we let people know that this is happening, maybe people won't forget the Philippines, because there is a tendency to just forget the Philippines. You say,
Uh, well, there's other reasons that I think it's worthwhile to pay attention to what's happening in the Philippines. Besides the fact that we've got relatives back there, and because we care for our ancestry, our descendancy, and all the rest of that stuff. But
Like, give me
even
one.
as an objective person looking at the global situation, the
Mhm.
Philippines is really a major element in what goes on in Asia. And despite the fact that this nationalism that is kind of a remake of Marcos nationalism, that grew up during the Marcos regime, um, there's got to be some intelligent discussion going on. I really a miserable failure in not keeping in contact with several of the scholars that I know that are basically of my generation and maybe one generation younger that were really strong, if not radical. I mean, a lot of them were radical and on the verge of revolutionary at one time in their lives. And I really need to renew my contacts with them, and
Well,
because it's their perspective that I think would be worthy.
well, yeah, and they're of a generation that knows firsthand what happened in the 60s and 70s. But tell me, in terms of the current crises in Asia, it's pretty much North Korea saber rattling, the United States and South Korea doing their drills. You got all that going on, and you have North Korea now firing missiles that
Right,
can go beyond Guam. And if they
right,
put it in the other direction, it could possibly be a threat to the Philippines. What,
sure.
what what do you think about that? And then consider Joe Biden today talking about Russia,
Armageddon, yeah,
using the phrase Armageddon. Now,
yeah.
whenever a president uses the term Armageddon, uh, you got to take it seriously. If if in the next sentence he does not mention zombie apocalypse.
Oh man,
Because if he mentions zombie apocalypse, oh, that's just Joe
it's
being.
a his thing was a warning. He did a direct comparison to the Kennedy Khrushchev
Right.
situation, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and I think that was an apt comparison. I didn't like his reference to Armageddon. Um, I think it's a little too uh, off the cuff kind of statement. He should have left it right at a comparison with the Kennedy versus Khrushchev. Um, Now, the problem is that, however um, brash and at times antagonistic Khrushchev was, he wasn't nearly as antagonistic as Putin.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true. I mean, he did take off his shoe and bang it on the
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
What about crew?
That
That's
was,
how.
that was, but that's an old lawyer's trick in the U.S.
Yeah, but that's
If
how
you
we
if
do.
you if you have the law on your side, you argue the law. If you have the facts on your side, you argue the facts. If you don't have the law and the facts, you bang on the table. So
Mm.
Khrushchev was just being a good American attorney.
Yeah, well, I remember that move. I remember it, and now look, Putin.
Well, we will bury you is what I remember.
Yeah, well, Putin is he's kind of stuck. He doesn't know what to do.
God, make
Putin.
it sound like he's constipated. I don't think that's the problem.
Well, he doesn't know to come or go. I mean, he's leaving. He's
He's being
retreated.
pushed. He's being pushed harshly from the right,
Yeah,
really hard from the right. Okay, and so you got a bunch of really super militant, and a lot of them are military. Are pushing him to go hard. Well, if he's going to go hard with what though?
yeah,
With 300,000 or up to 1 million new recruits, many of whom are already being rejected because they're not physically fit enough. These
yeah,
guys are being turned away. You got another huge population. Some people say as many as 100,000 people have left
yeah,
over the last 2 weeks to avoid, the draft,
yeah.
and they're
Now,
taking family with them, right? And so they got really easy routes, right? I mean, they're even going to Kazakhstan. I mean, what the hell?
now Putin's got a problem. Putin's got a problem. He can't. He's got a domestic problem now. I think it is fair to try to offer him some kind of exit ramp, some kind of like,
No, man. No,
no, no,
he's a punk ass Napoleonic
ah,
freak.
Putin is Draymond, huh? You offered
He's
Draymond. You offered
Draymond,
Draymond an exit.
Draymond's 6'7" and 6'8", dude. Putin is in the opposite direction, my man. You know,
He's
Putin
like,
would be staring at Draymond's nipple.
yeah. Oh, I don't know if he'd go up that high. I think he'd like it further.
Well, he probably would keep it above the belt, as far as we know.
Yeah. Well, I just think that Putin is. I don't know what's going to happen, but this is going to be the back and forth for a while. Hey, did you know? I was reading this. Yemen is in the eighth year of a war there.
Yes.
If Yemen is in the eighth year of a war there, uh, probably we can expect Russia and Ukraine to be at it for what, 8 years? Is that so out of?
Yeah, I don't think it's
I
going to
don't
go
know.
like that.
I don't know
There's
if
a
it.
limited. The reason that they've been at war for this long is that the Saudis are really waging a very limited attack. They do want to wipe them out. They want to wipe the Yemenis out. Okay, but they're not going full bore as
Oh,
Putin thought he was doing when he first attacked Kiev.
it's slow drip, slow drip, slow.
Yeah, yeah. It's a limited engagement. Now,
Well,
however, the Saudis have alienated us because they're among the OPEC nations that are uh, holding back on the production of oil. Okay, which is going to again add to the problem of inflation, and it's going to hurt anybody who's dependent on petroleum products during the winter when they are most dependent on energy products, right? To be able to just keep warm.
mhm.
So this has created a really nasty situation. For myself, Biden embarrassed me, man, when he fist bumped MBS,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
and now he's getting a little snap kick to the groin. This is not a good thing. This
Okay.
is not a good thing, and it comes at a time. I mean, these guys are taking instruction from Putin. It's like you got to get them right before they have their election because this is going to hurt. The possibility that Biden's presidential popularity, right, will increase or at least remain level. We got to put a hole in them, and that's what they're trying to do. They're really trying to detract from the attractiveness of not only the Biden administration and Mr. Biden himself. Well, we're going to get to Hunter, right?
Yeah, right. That's just, well, it's not. It is scary because it means that it's going to deflate Biden totally. I think, and uh, if it happens, it may not
The
happen.
son. Okay, so the sins of the son should visit the father.
See, that's the thing. I think the sins of the son are the sins of the son, and unless the father participated or enabled it, I think the father should be out of it. But I don't think that's going to be so easy, and I think that we'll see in the next, by the midterms. But that's one of the reasons why Biden couldn't be so enthusiastic about, oh, I'm going to run again. Although he probably want to run again, I don't know if he wants to state it quite yet. Until he knows.
I don't know if Mrs. Biden. I don't know if Jill is all that excited about him running again.
Well, I think, yeah, you might be right there, but I think that for a moment it looked like he had some victories and looked like he was moving in a positive direction. I think if the economy uh, takes a real hit, by election time, certainly what the Saudis did, what OPEC did the other day, isn't gonna help. But I mean, I'm paying what, $6 plus for gas.
Yep,
Uh,
yep, and
I
that's regular. That's
Yeah,
regular.
right. And
A
I'm not.
couple, a couple of my cars still supposed to require a premium, right?
Yeah. Well, it's tough. I'm just not doing a lot of traveling, not doing a lot of spending, but
Hey, you're
but
not alone. I mean, a lot of us are doing that.
I think a
I'm
lot
glad
of.
you're coming into the city at least to see us one time live and in person.
Yeah, but I think one of the things is that oh boy, I think we're going to come out of this, but it's going to take some time. We do a lot,
Absolutely,
we do a lot of can
absolutely.
we do a lot of
I think
can.
I think okay. First of all, I think the Democrats could still one higher probability that they'll keep the Senate, some possibility that they can keep the House. And a reason that we can't estimate that is I don't know what mechanisms or questions the pollsters are asking. The other thing is there is a hidden voting element, and that hidden voting element is suburbanites and young people, especially college age people. And so I am really trying to. I have friends that are a little younger than us, younger than me anyway, that are now going to swing states, purplish states like Nevada, to try and get the vote out, to drive the vote. And that's really a good move. I mean, that's what the Democrats should be doing nationwide.
Yeah.
I don't think they've done enough of that. I don't, I've talked to my Latino colleagues, and they're saying minimal outreach. They're outside of California. There's not that much outreach to Latino communities, right?
Then there's not really that much outreach to Asians, and there's got
That's true too. That is absolutely true.
there's got to be that outreach. So, all right, so it all goes back to the midterms. So, what do you think about Biden and his dope, making dope the big issue, the dope part?
That affects. I don't know. The number was something like something in the shy of 65,000, I think, people. But that's a small number of people because it's federal level offense.
Right,
Okay,
right,
it's federal level offense, and so it's going to be the states that really say, and I think it's 19 states, not only medicinal but recreational is
right.
legal. Okay, so the other states are still going to be able to enforce their laws. It's just that the feds won't be enforcing their, and there's a review going on to lower the schedule of marijuana down to second or third level.
It shouldn't be fentanyl. It shouldn't be up there with fentanyl or
That's right. Fentanyl should be up there with coke, heroin, and I think LSD is still Schedule One.
yeah. I
Um,
I think I think you're right. It's more symbolic, but
yeah,
there's I thought it was more than 65,000. I know that the states have to do more.
yeah,
That on the federal level, it's not as many cases,
that's
but
right.
but
And that's
it's
over many years, right? I mean, we're talking about many years. I was what I was telling Linda, my wife, was I'm more interested in seeing whether any of the news and his history commentators talk about the origin of the policy to make marijuana a Schedule One drug, and because that really is all about race.
right. Well, some of the things that they talk about that blacks and whites are equal users of marijuana, but when it comes to being arrested,
Right,
blacks are three times more. This is an ACLU study.
right.
So, I mean, there's a lot of disparities because of that, and it's a big deal. Um, I don't know a lot of marijuana smokers these days. I guess that's a sign that I am old and mature. I recognize it. I recognize good marijuana when I smell it, and I also know that people who have the best marijuana usually play the best music. That is that's what I know.
Okay, okay. I get. I used to play in a band, right? And we were pretty good. If we had better management, we probably would have, gotten even better gigs. But we played the college route. We played a lot of the clubs. We played the big clubs. We played Great American Music Hall in San Francisco, which was a big deal.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Next to the O'Farrell
and
Theater.
and those things that you talk about, yeah, that musicians engage in, particularly musicians of the 60s and 70s. And
Yeah,
I would say, well, yes, we did all of that.
yeah.
But you said the best, the people who smoke the best dope play the best music. we I recorded how we sounded, right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
we were straight and being serious, and when we were kind of crooked and had done some, we had imbibed, okay,
Like,
and
okay. You're
and
smoking,
and we thought, wow, man, that was such a great session, and we played the stuff back, and it was sloppy.
yeah.
It was creative. It
Yeah.
was really creative, but it was sloppy. People's rhythm was off. We weren't precise, and silence is as important as sound when you're playing songs, right? And
Yep.
so I can tell you that it doesn't necessarily make you. I mean, the Grateful Dead had that sound for a reason.
Well, that's because they're eating those uh, hashish babinkas or the
And other adventures, carrot cake was tastier. That
yeah.
was tastier.
Look, I'm just saying, I'm trying to discuss intelligently this Biden pardon. I think, though, when you think about what it does to people, some people who were pinched on that federal law and they couldn't get work. They
Yeah,
had
the
to.
numbers aren't that big, but it's really important for them
Oh yeah,
because they don't have to include it
yeah,
on
ab-
if it's a complete clearing, they don't have to include it on their filing, for employment.
yeah. No, it's a big deal. It's a big deal. All right, so we talked about marijuana. All right, one last thing on DACA, the Dreamers,
Oh
and
boy.
and
Oh boy.
when the Fifth Circuit,
Yeah, Fifth Circuit.
when they said it's illegal, it was just a three-judge panel. They could ask for on bank the full Fifth Circuit, or I guess it goes back to Texas now, and then Texas gets
Yeah.
it, and then it goes back to the Supreme Court, and they can actually rule on the merits at some point because they kicked it back when the Supreme Court rejected Texas's claim. They kicked it back to Texas, saying you got to reconsider some on some other aspects. They didn't really look at the guts of the law. So uh, if you were uh, if you were a dreamer right now, would you be worried?
Uh, ask me after the election. I think right now you should be worried because of the election. Okay, and you should be telling everybody that cares about you, get your butt into that voting or turn in your ballot, man,
Yeah,
and vote for people that are going to uphold DACA and
yeah,
even change the immigration policy so that we have something that makes freaking sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So right now, though, uh, because I talked to some other folks and they said you can always extend. You can always extend. You're legal now. You're good now. Don't worry about it now. But you're right. In less than 2 months, get out there and vote.
Years ago,
Get a ballot in there.
during the Obama administration, when DACA was first created, about a year after it was created, there was somebody on campus who was acting with the blessing of the local ICE offices, right, in San Francisco. And what they were doing was encouraging students to sign up for DACA. And the big thing was, and this was a Filipina, it
Mm,
was a Filipino young woman, and I heard about it, and I checked into it, and then somebody asked me to attend a conference with the ICE administration, the local administration, and it was all Filipinos, and the vast majority of people who attended were either attorneys, or people who worked in attorneys' offices who specialized in part, at least, in immigration practice. Okay. And so they knew their stuff. I mean, these people did it on a regular basis, on a daily basis, everything. Questions went all the way around. I didn't say a thing, and just surely by accident, where the two people representing the ICE offices sat down. One was a Chinese immigrant, sounded like a woman, and the other was an Anglo American administrator. And they happened to sit down directly opposite me. Okay, so I think it was very noticeable to them that I hadn't said a thing. Okay, everybody else asked questions, made statements. I hadn't said a thing. And so he knew who I was because he said, "Well, we're hoping that, Professor, what is your opinion?" And he addressed me in that way. And I looked at him, and here's how simple my response was: "It's all about trust." That was all I said. And he immediately sat back in his chair in a moment of, noticeable displeasure. I mean, he wasn't antagonistic, but he was disappointed
All
that I
about
would say that.
trust,
It's all about trust because they're saying Latinos are signing up like crazy and
right?
taking advantage of DACA, and Filipinos are not.
Right.
Okay, and I can't control the way people feel about government and trust.
That is the big thing about so many more eligible Filipinos did not sign up for DACA, or maybe they did late, but as things changed. But a lot of that is, like you said, I think you're right. Trust is it, and
Well, who would be eligible to sign up for DACA is mostly kids, right? And
right,
and up until like 18 years old. And who's in control of a lot of that and the way that the kids are going to act? And it's going to be their parents. So it may not even be the kids who are distrustful. They don't have enough experience with government to have
yeah,
distrust of it, right?
right. But if you were an immigrant who came here post Marcos,
Right.
or here post Corey,
Yeah.
post Macapagal,
Yeah.
you know that government is, your view of government is so dim.
Yep.
And you come to America thinking, oh, maybe this is going to be better. But then you get disappointed. I
Well,
mean,
we
that,
also have a very high TNT rate. And so
oh, yeah,
part of the problem with tago ng tago, that means
I did.
that they're not.
They're
Yeah,
not legal.
they're not undocumented. Okay,
Yeah, they're
so
not.
as undocumented people, they are worried that if people register for DACA, that there's going to be some kind of investigation or connection with other members of the family who may be TNT,
But
who
yet,
may be undocumented.
that was always the case. I mean, even
Yes,
for Hispanics, I mean,
yes,
the reason why some of them didn't sign up is because they were distrustful. They were, uh, you know,
fearful.
they
Yeah,
yeah, they were undocumented. But at some point, you do it because if you do sign up, you're in this new kind of path. Now,
right.
my thing is, after 10 years of this, you have proven your worth, your value as a citizen. At some point, this has to count for something. Just like a person who's in the criminal justice system and spends 10 years in jail before they come up before the judge. At some point, the time spent has to mean something. That's a hope. I don't know if it's valid. I don't know if it really matters to anyone, but I would think that if you spend 10 years on a program like this, contributing, paying taxes, showing that you're worthy of citizenship, it's got to count for something.
Well, I'm going to quote someone, and you'll recognize the quote immediately. Well, there he goes again.
Well, I, I
Yeah,
think
you have an expectation that the majority of Americans, and more importantly, the majority of Americans holding congressional office, right, will behave in a rational and fair-minded manner.
that is the
Okay,
hope. Yes,
but one party, as I said in my class, over the last 25 years, there's a couple of paragraphs about halfway through my class that are on the web page for the middle weeks of a 15-week course, and it says here's the way it went after the Second World War, and we look at the distinct further right movement, right, of core elements of the Republican Party, okay, all the way up to the wonderful professor's congressional term, short term, in the 80s under Reagan, when they came up with the contract for America. Remember that?
oh yeah, Gingrich's thing.
The Newt,
Yeah,
Mr. Newt.
contract on America.
That's true. It was more like a contract on America
Yeah.
and against America,
Yeah.
and it became so unpopular that it became a drag on all election offices, right, up and down ballot. And so they booted Gingrich out of the speaker position, right? And but despite that, right, the
Mhm.
rightward movement continued, so that the Republican Party was no longer conservative by any means. They were becoming far more radical right, okay,
Right.
and willing to ride on the backs of people that were not quite Trump, but close to it. Okay, and then their constituency went ahead and accepted those kinds of behaviors and those kinds of policies as legitimate. And
Mhm.
there, look at the reactionary policies, and well, just the reaction to even Obama running.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, you know?
Well, you saw what Trump did. Birtherism. And
Yeah, and I saw my Catholic constituents saying, Filipinos asking me, can a Muslim serve as
I know
president?
his
Yeah,
his
and I
his
said, well, who's the Muslim? I wanted to make sure.
his middle name is Hussein.
Yeah, so he's a Muslim, and I said, no, he's not a Muslim. I said, and are you going to tell me that he wasn't born in the United States? Are you going to do that too? Because
Yeah. Yeah. All
there's
right.
all kind of.
So Dan, I I only believe that we have to keep pushing for an idealistic vision because if we someone has to because if we do then what we end up with is something maybe less than ideal but it's
Well,
something
I'm making fun of you because I believe in the same things, but I'll tell you, we are once again as one of the things that they tell you not to do when you're sailing is don't urinate into the wind. you know, and
yeah
and we have to be careful that we do not urinate or even spit into the wind, right? And
that,
uh,
that's a good one. Yeah.
yeah,
I
so I agree with you that that should be where we're at. And actually, what you're asking for and what you're saying America should do is not even left or right. It's right down the middle. It is
right
exactly down the middle.
yes it's a but it's a moral position and
Yes.
all I'm really advocating is that we can all from our various perspectives we could do our own thing we just have to keep pushing in the right direction and ultimately I think it works its way out and even when we lose it works its way out and because look we survived Trump we'll survive this again uh,
I don't know if we've
well,
survived
yeah,
Trump.
well
He's going to be rejected eventually. Okay, and that may come after this November. He's going to be rejected. He also the foolish thing that the Republicans are doing is they're thinking if they win the House, they'll be able to screw over the January 6th committee, and it's over for them. Well, they've already put out enough information, okay, that people who are going to be swayed, right, have either been swayed or not going to be swayed. Okay, so that's done. What the clown Republicans, the big mistake, right? I'm getting at my connections.
you're
Okay,
okay
the big
we'll finish
mistake
it
that they're assuming that they're going to be able to shut down everything. The DOJ is still going to be working, and it's still going to be prosecuting.
yeah yeah
And
like I said it's not easy there's gonna be some obstacles but I
yeah, the DOJ
things
is going to get, get
uh,
they're going
uh,
to
oh
start investigating
all right Dan
members
you're
of
we
Congress,
the the internet is telling us something
and they
about
deserve
Dan. Oh, okay.
to be
Dan, I'm sorry.
investigated,
Dan. All right, Dan.
and
Look,
they
your
deserve
your
to
internet.
be removed from
Dan,
office,
Dan.
so they can go ahead and
Okay. All right, Dan, your internet is fading on us, so I'm going to have to say goodbye to Dan. Here's my good friend Dan Gonzalez, Professor Dan Gonzalez, Professor Emeritus, San Francisco State University College of Ethnic Studies. He joins us on Friday. We talk about everything in the news. We talked about Draymond Green. Oh, here he's back. Dan. Oh, nope, Dan's not back. Okay, I'm going to have to say goodbye to Dan. But Dan joins us every Friday. He'll be back again. We'll put the podcast on. He was making a point about Trump, and Trump isn't going away. But as I said, I'm trying to be optimistic. We do our thing. We play and express ourselves the way we were meant to. We contribute, and we force everyone to go in the right direction, and things work out. I'm trying to be optimistic, maybe too idealistic for some, as my friend Dan pointed out, but I think it's the way to stay sane. All right, so that's going to do it for our show today. We'll put this on the podcast. We're going to put the last couple on the podcast. Emil Amok say this is just live now, and you get it on Twitter at Emil Amok, EMILAMOK. You get the replays on AMOK.com. You see it on YouTube. Oh, check out the YouTube. We need more subscribers on YouTube. The YouTube channel, Emil Guillermo on YouTube. We also are on Facebook, Facebook.com, Facebook Watch, Facebook Live, FB.com/EmilGuillermo.media. We do this. We just react, talk about the news. We go on this global unfixated state, talking about the events and the issues that matter to us. People of color, people of conscience, and we share it with you here on this micro talk show. Emil Amok's Takeout, Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific. Thank you for joining us. I am in a play next week, October 13th through 16th, called The Conductor. Check out theaterforthenewcity.net. Tickets $18. It's a virtual reading. Virtual, so you can be anywhere in the world. You can be in the Philippines and see it. You can be in Hawaii and see it. I have a small part, but it's a power pack, action pack play. Theaterforthenewcity.net. I play a Tucker Carlson person in brownface. Kind of like against type, right? Anyway, saw my guru the other day. He doesn't like to be called a guru. He likes to be called just someone you consult, just to make sure you're not going off the tracks or off the rails. Guardrail guru, making sure you don't go over the cliff in your meditation. He was very kind to me. He said, it sounds like you're doing something right. Go off in the corner and be by yourself some more. That's what you want from a guru. Just say, you got it. Go off in the corner. But I told him that, sometimes you get to this emptiness phase in meditation where, that's enlightenment, they say. I mean, to degrees, like you go to these karate schools, you get to be a black belt, but you're not really a black belt. There's like degrees, I mean, you got the moves down, but same with meditation. You can sit. And, I've been only meditating somewhat formally for 2.5 years. That's like barely graduating from pre-K, pre-K. That's like nursery school. And then I can start kindergarten, right? So I'm realistic about where I am with my meditation. But, you think, am I at, that zero, when you go up and then you go down and you're at, like if your practice was like a wave or like a a graphic chart of like where the sound is, it goes up to 10 and then it rises and then falls. And then at 0, it might go up again, but then it goes down to 0. And 0 is like, that's enlightenment. You go deeper. And, sometimes you feel it. You say, oh, I'm there. Oh, I'm not there. I'm just briefly. But that's a challenge. Can you get inside 0? And my teacher was saying, there's a saying that you get inside 0 and you're there because it doesn't matter what you see, or it doesn't matter if you're seen or if you can see. You're just in this state, a perfect state of being. And that's the goal. I mean, if there are goals, you're not supposed to strive or try to grasp, but you're trying to get to a state. And you know it when you're in the moment and you're totally aware of where you are. And you can be at 0 in the present. Does that make sense? I'll make it make sense. But this is part of the meditation practice. And it builds up like a muscle. And if you have, so like I said, I've only been doing it a couple of years. I'm not even Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm trying. But the key, when you feel like, oh, I'm trying to perfect this state, but what is the answer? What is the thing that makes this so valuable? And what do I fill this state with to make it feel like this is the answer is love. The answer is love. You fill it with love. Love. Self-love. But first, love of others. The service aspect, show love toward others. Because what happens, it comes back. My mother used to say that to me. Show love to others. It comes back. It always comes back. And then the self-love. The self-love that gives you the kind of quiet power to live your life. So it's a form of the metta, M-E-T-T-A, the loving self-kindness meditation. It's helpful. It's helped me. I bet you it could help Draymond Green. Draymond, come meditate with me. Meditate with me. We'll get your plus minus up. We'll get your stats up. Come on, Draymond. You shouldn't have punched Jordan Poole. God, I love Jordan Poole. I hated him when he first started. Because wore these like little glasses and he had his hair funny and he wasn't that good. He kept missing. Now he can't miss. Or he's good now. Jordan Poole. Love the guy. When Draymond that was a sucker punch. Watch the earlier part of the show. But I'll help Draymond in service of the Warriors, in service of Dub Nation. I'll help you meditate. And so, as I wish for me, I wish for you. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. And may you live with ease. Emil Guillermo here. Check out our our replays on amok.com. Back again next time, 2 p.m. Pacific, live. I'll tell you how the birthday went. Till then, mahal kita.